Welcome to Coffee with the Sarlos. We are your hosts of the show, Karen and Kelly Sarlo. Whether you're struggling with grief or you just need answers, we connect you with spirit to find relief, clarity, and direction in life. We can help you move forward.
Hi, Kelly.
Good morning.
Good morning. This session starts when I'm sitting in the back room looking out the window to see all the trees in the backyard. I had no idea that it was going to lead into a session. I just went to sit there to do nothing. And it's something I like to practice doing, and I hadn't been doing for a little while. So I went and I grabbed my block, sat, looked out the window, and thought, I need to just be in a nothing space. And first of all, that means to start checking in with my own body and going through and feeling, what do I feel in my body as I'm just looking outside at nature. So I started to do that. And then I'm, paying attention to my breathing. That was the next thing. And just continuing to still see what's going on in the backyard. And I start noticing, oh, actually, there's something going on in the backyard. But I've been concentrating so much on what's going on in my own body and trying to get to this nothing space, but just quieting myself and being in tune with my body and my breathing. And I see this black bird moving around in the backyard in different spots. And at first I just think, oh, it's just a nice black bird. No. It comes and it stands on the deck. And then I notice, no, this black bird is actually trying to communicate with me. And this bird, it's a crow, by the way. It moves across the deck in a slow motion in a roundabout way, but it gets closer and closer to the window that I'm sitting beside. And now my window, as you know, goes very close to the ground in that room. So the bird and I are not eye to eye, but very close. And I'm thinking, oh, I think this bird is giving me messages. Maybe it's for me. I don't know. So I think, okay, I'm just going to connect with the bird and see what's going on. And the bird says to me, yeah, I'm trying to talk to you. You need to be paying some attention. Now I'm going to go and fly into this tree. And then I think, oh, so now I'm watching the bird to see if it's going to fly into the tree, that I'm getting this message that it's going into the tree, and see if I'm right. Sure enough, he goes and he flies and sits in this tree. And then I see that there are some other blackbirds in that area, and I think, okay. And then he comes back and he sits back on the deck again. So now I'm getting some really good validations for me that there's some kind of communication going on. And the blackbird, well, the messages that I'm getting, the first one is, you think you know what you want in a partner when you say that you want somebody who has a good job, when you say whether they have kids or they don't have kids, when you say that you want them to enjoy hiking because you like hiking. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I don't like hiking. And hold on a second. That's not how I talk to the universe about what I'm looking for if I think of partnership. So then it's like, oh, hold up. These are messages coming in for a client because I've got clients booked later. This is what's going on. So I start paying more attention to it and really to be specific, because now I want to remember it. I don't just want to hear it for myself. I want to remember it because I'm going to have to repeat it. And that's far different than remembering it for yourself. Somehow I'm not as kind to myself when I want to remember it for a client, because I want to remember every single message.
Yeah, because I think we also anticipate there's going to be follow-up questions.
Yes.
From a client.
Yeah. So I listened, and the crow kept saying that this person was looking for, well, they need to have this kind of a job. They need to be a professional because I'm a professional. I don't know how that makes sense to anybody, but the dating apps apparently have trained us to think in some of these ways, is what I'm learning. Anyway, that just comes through in the session later. You had a look on your
I don't
face.
think that's true, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to disagree. But we could talk about that, but
I think we can both be right. Go on.
Yeah. And I think in this particular case, it's pertinent to the client that calls that this particular woman is looking for a partner, and this is how she's identifying what she's looking for in a partner. So she's particularly picking apps that are for professionals to professionals.
Yeah.
And this is how she's looking at trying to find a partner. And the crow says that she hasn't given consideration to if the person prioritizes integrity, if the person prioritizes connection to each other, if they have, and so on. So there's this list of things that the crow starts to give me that could shift her so that she actually can have conversations with somebody that she's dating that moves from that particular level. How much money do you make? Are you a professional? Do you have children? Which are still good questions. Some of those are like still good, but into other levels of conversation with this person, so that she's moving, I'll say, towards the partnership she wants, because she's been dating and wants a partner, but doesn't seem to have a process or to be thinking more deeply about what she's looking for in a relationship. So when she calls and I say things to her like that, this crow arrived and this is what he was saying, she just sat there and looked at me and said, "It's true." She says, when I talk to my girlfriends and we talk about dating and finding a partner, she says, we do stay in the conversation that you said I did. She says, we do stay there. And we even judge the people that we're dating on that criteria. She says, you're right. We don't sit there and say, did we talk about values? Did we talk about goals? Did we talk about how we connect to our children? And how do we want to co-parent? Like, how do we even want to speak to each other? She says, we don't do anything like that. And she says, and I'm not doing it in the dating either. She says, and I said, oh no, you don't need to tell me. You're going from the surface stuff to the sex part. And she goes, yes. And I said, and you're going to the sex part super quickly after that kind of a conversation that you can get done with somebody in one evening. And she said, yeah, that's very true. And I said, and then you're wondering why you're feeling used and why you're feeling disconnected, why you're getting angry at men, instead of looking at the way that she's approaching, the way that she's seeing, the way that she's trying to connect to them. She's blaming them in general as a whole group of people. And now she's struggling, and so are her friends, with bashing them instead of looking at themselves and saying, hey, instead of bashing them and thinking they're all the same, maybe I could look at the fact that I'm not engaging in conversation to actually see if there's more before I get involved and then get angry and think I'm the one that's being used. So this all came from this crow sitting on the deck, which I think is super interesting and fun. Mm-hmm. So when she came to the session later that day, I told her that it came through the messages of the crow and how much she was missing the magic of the relationships that come from a deeper sense of intimacy that's created by those conversations. But that if she doesn't know where she wants to create those conversations, then she's always just feeling like she's being victimized instead of understanding that she may also be victimizing the other person. Mm-hmm. And not understanding how she's contributing to their feelings of it and how she's contributing to her own feelings of it. Mm-hmm. That was a great conversation, all thanks to the crow sitting in the backyard.
That's lovely.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go back now to talking about sitting on the deck with the crow that morning. And the crow says to me, I represent magic for her. I represent her creativity and her playfulness. And I'm here to remind her that she's supposed to be able to engage in those things when she's on dates with this person to figure out if she's actually got a connection and if she actually enjoys this person. So later in the session, when I said that to her about the other parts of what the crow was trying to represent, she said, I don't know what you mean. What playfulness? And I said, well, exactly. I said, there seems to be a conversation between you and a man, and then sex right afterwards, instead of engaging in something that's creative or playful. And she goes, you're going to have to pause right there. She says, because I'm too damn busy for playful and creative. What do you mean? And I said, well, the guides were showing me where when you were a child, you actually really enjoyed painting, and she really enjoyed art. And she goes, that's true. She goes, I did. She says, but that's in the days when you're a kid and you get free time. I don't have free time. And I said, well, they're trying to say to you that you need to create some of that so that you get back in touch with yourself again. And that part of yourself that is fun, that can lean into that joy and playfulness. Maybe even that it leads into different aspects of yourself. Maybe you like to tease, but in a kind, gentle way, whatever the playfulness is. And she goes, She says, I think I get your point. She says, because I complained that a lot of the men are boring.
Well, if you have time to date, you have time to be creative. You could go on a paint by numbers date. You could go to a painting class. You could do a sketching class. Like, you could incorporate it on the actual date.
Yeah.
See how the person copes with creativity or taps into creativity, right? Because creativity involves vulnerability. So if you are willing to go on a date, which is already vulnerable to begin with, unless you're treating it like a fucking business transaction and just going back and forth with surface level questions, like, I don't know, if you have time to date, you have time to be creative.
You did such a good job.
Thanks. It was born out of impatience. Go on.
Everybody knows this is my moment.
Yeah. Karen's got to collect herself and figure out where the story's going to go from here.
Yeah. This is where I have to pause and think, okay, she's just said all my next points.
Well, maybe some people like an efficient coffee with the Sarlos and they're happy to get on with their day and they end it with a laugh.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe they all curse my name too. I don't know.
No, you know what, Kelly? I think it's so good because you do point all of that out in such a clear and succinct way. And then we can move on in the conversation. I don't mind constantly saying in these podcasts now that, and then the guides told her what you just said.
Thanks. I also do think, I think I'm just defending my position on the podcast now. I do think that there's like a time and a place for your gentle delivery of a message and for people to take their time drawing the parallel to their own lives. And I love that. I certainly need it too. And then there's also something to be said for being like smacked across the face with the lesson and told to just like suck it up and actually do something about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if people are listening to this and it's like, woe is me. Dating's hard, by the way. Like, I have so much empathy. I think there should have been a trigger warning before this podcast because dating is awful.
Trigger warning
for dating topics. And we're not talking about abuse. We're just talking about like the process of dating, sucking.
Yeah.
But like that's also too if you're approaching it from this same perspective, right?
Yeah.
Of it's a business transaction. I have to acquire a partner and it becomes this like really unfortunate process. It also can suck for the person who's pure of heart, wants to do creative things, deeply connect, and they get a slew of people that are on the former page, right? But yeah, I think just kind of having that like succinct smack of like, here are the facts, do something different. It can wake us up in a different way, and actually a way that feels like safe, succinct, and like, okay, I feel like I can put one foot in front of the other because I think the smack in the face creates some momentum at some point.
I think it's really good that you're talking about both aspects because it reminds me of the fit we have between us as the channelers or you as the life coach and the client, and that we have to be in tune to see if this particular person is going to be better with the story or the examples. She needed the examples. This particular client, when this message came out about being creative and then talking to her about some of the very creative things that she just started to learn to do in childhood and got taken away. She had a very brief interest in them and really didn't know if she was good or not, but said she wasn't. Didn't know if she enjoyed it or not, but said she didn't. And the guides were trying to point out that because it was taken away from her by her parents, that she went to the negative in all of it, that I'm no good at it, that I don't enjoy it, that I don't have time for it. She went to all of those things as that was her story, even though that's not the truth of her story. Mm-hmm. And the guides were there to point out to her, oh, no, 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 no. This is how you came by these statements and these beliefs about yourself. They're not even true. And we're here to say that if you choose to go back and to experiment in that again, in this area, you're going to find out that there's a whole piece of yourself that is full of joy here.
Okay, so can I point something out too?
Yeah.
Like in defense of the client?
Yeah.
Not from you, just so that people understand the way that arts was explained to her essentially made her choose love and acceptance from parents or something that potentially brings me joy, right? And so the shutting down of the arts helps her acquire the love that she wants from her parents. So this is very smart and strategic. And now she's sitting on dates trying to acquire love once again. So there's no room for art. There's no room for playfulness. That's how she has learned to acquire love. So to sit down in front of a crow and a Karen and hear that you can actually bring the thing that she intuitively connected to and enjoyed, the idea that that could actually be the thing that connects her to the love she truly wants would be mind-blowing and maybe not even believable.
You just blew me away.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're always doing the exact thing from childhood where we think we earned love.
Yeah. Kelly, I appreciate that so much, what you just said.
Mm-hmm. And the difference being, though, just so people understand, she didn't earn her parents' love. She earned her parents' approval.
Yeah.
Approval and love are two different things.
Right. And sadly, that some parents are trying to teach approval instead of love.
Absolutely. And so we go on these dates where we are professional seeking professional saying, will you also approve of me? Not really and truly, do you see me, hear me, understand me, therefore love me?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for all of that. In the session then, the guides speak to her. They didn't say all of that to her. They talked to her simply about that she'd missed and that she had missed an opportunity to connect to herself and to discover who she is. And yet here she is on the date trying to say, hey, are you going to love who I am? But I don't know who I am, and I'm not going to try and figure it out. So the guide said to her, hey, this is an opportunity. This is actually something that brings back magic and fun in your life and something that you could share with this person. Or not, just be all on your own, figure out who you are. And they pointed out that part of the reason why she didn't want to go back when they suggested going back and discovering herself through art was that she wanted things to be perfect. And her parents encouraged the perfection. So when they saw the art as a child and went, well, clearly there's no real skill here. Imagine doing that when a person is a child.
I'm going to say something.
Blows my mind.
I'm going to say something. Please don't unfollow the podcast. I appreciate art. I want to just preface this by saying I appreciate all kinds of art. And it's subjective.
Yeah.
To look at any different style of art, you could say is stupid, is not perfect, is ugly. Like there are certain mediums of art that I am just like, what the fuck? Why are we hanging this on a wall? Right? And yet someone might say the same thing of the artwork behind us on this podcast show, right? Like it's all subjective. So that it's very easy for someone who's growing up wanting perfection to gravitate away from art because of the subjectiveness, right? To gravitate to numbers that just simply add up or don't. And there's no subjectivity to it. Right? It's objective. So I think it's really cool to see what we gravitate toward as individuals, because that is really going to be reflective of our ability to tolerate ambiguity, to tolerate difference, to tolerate anything that isn't just so.
Yeah, that's fair. So the guides had a little conversation with her about her perspective on perfection and the fact that she was keeping a closed mind to going back to art because it wasn't going to give her the ability to feel that she was doing something perfectly. And that this had been stressed by her parents by saying, well, clearly no skills, no gift here.
Yeah. So, okay. And here's an example if anyone's struggling to understand this. As children, you're taught to color inside the lines. Now, I understand as an adult now, they're trying to teach us hand-eye coordination and a bunch of different motor skills, which is awesome. But think about it. You're taught to color inside the line and you're told to go back and do your work if you can't stay inside the lines. Okay. Then you get something like watercolor, where you sketch the outline and you put the brush outside the line and it's considered beautiful. And I, as a little Enneagram 1 who really resonates with this woman in the podcast, would be like, what's wrong with you? Why did you make the line in the first place? What the hell's happening here? Right? Like, it's so confounding because art defies rules.
Yeah.
And yet it has rules.
Oh, yeah, lots. That's really cool.
I don't go near art with a 10-foot pole.
Right. Thank you. So they talked to her about this version of wanting perfection. And then also in her dating, where she wants to keep the conversations at surface levels because she's looking to keep these men at levels of, I see you with a certain level of perfection, and then sex, and then over. Because if I give you more time, I will see your imperfections. And she just sat there and looked at me and went, oh my God. She said, how did a raven,
Crow.
pardon me, how did a crow bring this level of understanding to me today? What the hell, Karen? She goes, you got all of that from wanting quiet time, doing nothing, looking out your window on your deck. And I went, yeah. I said, but this is exactly why we connect to the spirit world. This is exactly why we take time to do nothing, to sit still, to just receive what comes to us. And that it doesn't always make sense completely in the moment. So I said to her, when I was sitting on the deck looking at the bird and just looking at nature in the backyard and being quiet, I didn't get all of this. I had to get the whole picture once I started speaking to you and you respond in the session, and the channeling can become fuller. There can be more context, more specific examples like the painting and your parents' response to it and the beliefs that you took around that situation as a child at that time, and how that inner child is still telling you the same story. Even though you're an adult now and you have no idea as an adult if you're capable or not. And she listened to that and she went, oh my God. She goes, that makes total sense. She goes, it would be like telling a child at 6 years old you can't drive a car, but then still believing it when you're 16 and when you're 20 and not even bothering to try to get your license because you're still holding on to that belief. And I went, that's right. And then she says, and then worse, I'm taking that into this relationship and I'm projecting things onto these guys and then I'm saying things about them without even knowing them. And she said, oh God, she says, I've been nasty. She goes, I've been really mean. She says, I don't even know these men and I've lumped them into this category of men.
Professionals.
Pardon me. Yes, definitely professionals. She won't see anybody else. But she doesn't understand all of the things that she's done in this relationship before she even meets them. Before she even goes and has that first conversation, or I won't even say just conversation, that first drink, conversation and sex. And so she just sat back and said, well, she says, I can certainly see where my programming has come from, and that I have to actually look at my whole idea of what dating is in itself. And I said, yeah. I said, it's supposed to be conversations. It's supposed to be creating a connection to somebody and seeing if you have not just common interests, but values and beliefs. And she goes, oh shit, I haven't even gone down that road. I haven't even considered talking about beliefs or any of those other things that you're saying. She says, I've just been in one area. And I said, and the thing of it is too, is that you're socializing with other people that are reflecting the same thing back. And I said, and I would be willing to bet you that you watch TV shows. And she just kind of goes like this, Kelly. And she goes, I think you'd be right. And I said, I'd be willing to bet you that you're watching TV shows that are reflecting that back to you and that you're enjoying those shows and that that's contributing to your belief around men, just like the men watching those shows are letting it contribute to their beliefs about women. And I said, would that make sense then as to actually what's happening to you? Is it actually reflecting now that what you're experiencing in your life is what you're also watching on TV? And she goes, I think so. And I said, and are you finding out that it isn't fun? And that's just a show. That's to make money. But now it's actually controlling your life. And she sat there and she said to me, well, she says, I don't think my girlfriends are going to like it or like me for bringing all of this up. She says, I think I might lose some friends here if I actually start pulling away from some of that. And I said, yeah. I said, but if you do pull away from that group of people and you do become more focused on healthy things in your life, just something as simple as figuring out if you actually do like art and then discussing that with somebody on a date, maybe going on a date, art related, aren't you going to have the partnership that you're actually deeply wanting? And she says, yeah. She says, because otherwise I can't get it. So what you're saying is, and what I'm understanding is that if I keep watching these shows, staying with this group of friends and not address that and not do any of the work, that I am going to continue to date these men. And I am going to continue ending these relationships because it's not all on them that this is happening. It's on me. And I said, yeah, I said, that's what you're crocheted up for. I just wanted to bring magic back into your life. And she goes, and the magic is part of the way of it is actually through the art. And I said, it is because doing the art is the way back to you. The crow is actually trying to give you a solid method a figure for you to figure out how to get back to your own self. So at the end of the session, the crow asked her to ask herself on a daily basis what inspires her each day, and if she could see art to see if anything actually inspired her, if she could actually pick something up and start doing a tutorial or taking a class or just sitting down and just sketching anything or taking crayons or paint out and just making messes to begin with. And she said, you know what? She said, this would be excellent for me because I hate messes. She said, so maybe this is where I really need to begin, is to have the messes contained into some area, but to actually put it out there in color and to see if I can actually enjoy the colors and what it does for my mind and my heart when I make a mess instead of wanting to fix that mess and contain it. And I said, oh my God. I said, then it would be perfect. If you're going to do that, that's watercolor because it all like the colors bleed, right? You do have some control, but it can be messy. As opposed to taking a pencil crayon where you can really control the pencil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that the clarity is about emotional maturity. Mm-hmm. The direction is the actionable steps within art, and that she can actually feel relief that there might be a beautiful connection out there for her.
Perfect.
Thank you for listening to Coffee with the Sarlos. If you enjoyed the show today, please be sure to subscribe on your podcast platform and leave a review. New shows will air every other Saturday.